How we
Hey,
doing, Donnie?
welcome. How you doing, Arian?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy Wednesday, veterans, and thank you for spending some time with us. Before we get started with today's topic and kind of sound off in the comments, who your coach is, if you've got a coach, uh, branch you served, or branch you served with, and years you served, and most of all, thank you for your service to our country. I'm doing great, Donnie. It's a sunny day in Central Texas at about 75 degrees, so I can't complain. It's not 98 or 109 like it was this last Saturday.
Ooh, there's some hot days.
Yeah, I'm
Good
sure you don't
seeing you
miss.
here. Good working with you again, brother. It's always good to serve best
Absolutely,
together.
absolutely. Can't wait to see you in person again. Got some comments in here. Nothing as of yet, but sure as people come in, we'll start seeing some comments of, you know, who's coming out here to give a shout out to their coach. Um, so a little bit about me. I served in the United States Army from 97 to 98 as an 11 Mike. Got out and then came back in '05 and stayed until 2015 and got medically retired at 90%. Served in Fort Hood, Fort Carson, did 5 years in Germany, one on tour to Iraq, one Afghanistan. And then, like I said, in 2015, I got medically retired at 90. And then with the help of VSCI and my coach, I got to 100% permanent in total almost 3 years ago now. So glad to be here and be a part of the process and everything as far as being a coach. I've been a coach for about 3 years. So glad to be here. Glad to see everyone here too. How about you, Donnie?
Yeah, likewise. It's great to be here. Veteran coach manager Donnie Whitten. I have been with VACI for coming on 4 years, I guess. Um, I'm a combat veteran, U.S. Army. I have been working in veteran services and benefits for uh, over a decade now. Um, I came here as a client and a coach, and then a senior veteran coach, now a veteran coach manager, and it's just a blessing to wake up and serve veterans every day and make this process a little bit easier for them, one at a time.
For sure, for sure. Got a few shout outs here to Coach JL, Lisa Baker, welcome, former Navy.
JL, all right. JL's on my team. She's a great coach.
Gabriel, 100% PNT. Glad to hear it. Mark Nichols, 92 to 90. Army, third ID. Awesome. Go Army.
22 years, Pepe. Long time. Thank you for your service, brother.
Wow. Absolutely. Oh, sad to see that, Paul. Good to see you could stop by. Keep in mind any of the questions that are here as well. We'll get to those at the very end and be able to answer all that in the Q&A if necessary towards the end. What really brought me here to be a veteran coach was to serve veterans, to give back, to have that water cooler talk or water pool Monday, whatever you want to call it. Because I didn't have that. I didn't have that brotherhood anymore when I got out. I didn't see that. And then when I saw that video with Brian, one of the videos with Brian, and I saw this guy, he just kept yelling "boom," and it grabbed my attention, and became a coach. Shortly after, I was um, what they call now a veteran ambassador, used to be called a VDR, and became a coach a year after that. So that was kind of my journey. But my big why was to be able to give back to my veterans that were unserviced and deserve more.
Hey, you had your exams this morning, Beverly. Good luck. Hopefully, you get the rating you deserve. I know it's always stressful once you get to that exam portion and have to wait. Right? It's always easier to tolerate when there's something that you can do. Right? A part of the process that's within your power. But after you're in the wait phase, you're kind of helpless, and then you really feel the anxiety and the frustration set in. But that's just kind of what you have to do. The waiting game. It's a good thing we were all professionally trained and hurry up and wait.
For sure. Well, Donnie, you want to go ahead and get the disclaimer out of the way, and we can get started with our today's topic and some of the things that we're going to talk about?
Sounds great.
So we are not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or any other entity recognized Department of Veteran Affairs, the VA, and we are not affiliated with the VA in any way. VA Claims Insider is an education-based coaching consulting company for disabled veterans, exploring eligibility for increased VA disability benefits and who wish to learn more about that process. VA Claims Insider also connects veterans with our vetted independent medical professionals and our preferred provider network for medical examinations and independent medical opinions, IMOs for a wide range of disability conditions. Okay, and a little bit about what we do. Strategy, education, and medical evidence is also known as our SEM method. What those three things stand for. So your strategy and individual game plan that you're working out with your coach. And if you don't have a coach yet, that's what you will start with. Education, a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to be a little bit about the education piece, along with any blog posts or anything else that we describe or have and that the coach gives to you as part of that process. And then medical evidence hands down every single time wins claims and can help you with your process and going through the program. You get a one-on-one strategy with a coaching. So that's that strategy session, both claim submission and CMP exam. Now, claim submission, we cannot submit your claim for you. Okay, so that is something you have to do on your own, but we can be there with you when you're doing it. CMP education is more so just going through the CMP exam with you to make sure you understand what the process is going to look like and stuff like that. Donnie, you want to go over our live classes?
Absolutely. So basically, we have classes 5 times a week. Live classes are extremely important to your process. Typically, they're 3 times a day. That may vary based on the day of the month. Sometimes, the last Wednesday of the month, there's not a class in the evening or night, but typically it's 3 times a day. We have coffee with the coaches. Coffee with the coaches is a great way to build a sense of community with your fellow veterans. Part of this process is not just the education piece, but the community piece, right? Getting comfortable, opening up about and being vulnerable about the problems you have that are associated with your disabilities, and being in a community of other veterans who can share and relate their experiences. It really helps to break down those barriers internally to be able to do that. Coffee with the coaches is a great way to start building that community. And then we have our mental health exam education class, right? So if you're doing a mental health claim or are going to do one in the future, it's good to attend that class and learn all the ins and outs and whys of what goes on with the mental health exam, whether that be from the VA or a mental health exam from a private provider. So that you're attending to get evidence for your claim. And then we have the medical exam education class. So everything outside of mental health is covered in that class. And you want to attend those classes frequently, often, right? So you learn something new every time, get different pieces of information. And if you're taking a college course, you don't attend a course just one time, right? And then go take the final. You attend as many times as you can so you can get familiar and fluent with the information. And then you want to take the final. It's the same way here. Those classes are very important and they're a valuable asset and resource.
Okay, you want to learn more? Just schedule a free discovery call and talk to one of our team members by going to vaclaims.help. And if you need help, reach out to to our organization at vaclaimsinsider.com. We'd love to partner with you on your VA claim journey. Okay, so is it possible to get urinary incontinence VA rating? Well, the straightforward answer is yes. VA disability benefits do cover incontinence. Urinary incontinence is defined as a lack of voluntary control urination. It's another way of saying voiding dysfunction. And I'm so sorry. The topic of today is going to be uncomfortable conditions, ED, urinary incontinence, and FSAD, also known as female sexual arousal disorder. Okay, and getting back to what we were just talking about too, voiding dysfunction. So the VA rates these dysfunctions like urinary incontinence under 38 CFR Part 4, 11 or 115A. So in this post, we'll explore the urinary incontinence VA rating, how the VA rates voiding dysfunctions, urinary incontinence as a secondary condition, and more. Donnie, you want to go over urinary incontinence VA rating?
Absolutely. So the VA uses diagnostic code 7517, which states that a bladder injury should be rated under the voiding dysfunction system. There are a series of disabilities that can be that can produce urinary incontinence and can be rated under voiding dysfunction. So some of those are chronic cystitis, calculus in the bladder, fistula of the bladder, injury of the bladder, stricture of the urethra, fistula of the urethra, injury of the prostate gland, residuals of treatment for malignant neoplasms of the urinary system. That's a hard one. Benign neoplasm of the genitourinary system, and neurogenic bladder, and bladder diverticulum. How the VA rates those? One, you have to establish service connection, right? So you get a current medical diagnosis, an in-service event, injury, or illness, and a medical nexus, which is the link between the current diagnosis and the in-service event, injury, or illness. And Coach Ian touched on that when he was talking about strategy, education, and medical evidence. How it's rated is after you're established for service connection, your urinary, it's basically based on how often you have to change your absorbent materials. These could get you a urinary incontinence VA rating 20%, 40%, 60%. A lot of times you'll see this connected as a secondary condition through TBI, but also, as you saw, there's neurogenic bladder. So neurogenic bladder is actually something, to be candid, that I suffer from. It's associated a lot of times with TBI, right? So your brain gets injured, and your brain controls everything. So it's easy to connect to the TBI. Typically there's some scans and other evidence, that connect that injury back to the TBI. But depending on the severity of your incontinence, the VA will issue you either pads that go inside your underwear and or diapers that you have to wear, and the frequency in which you have to change those and the severity of the incontinence is what your rating is based on. You might even be entitled to a clothing stipend once a year because urinary incontinence can damage your clothing. It's important to note that urinary incontinence is not a disease itself, but rather a symptom that can have several causes. There are other symptoms that go along with this, but one that the rating's based on, the frequency in which you change your padding, essentially. So it's important to not just go and get your own padding. Going through the VA also helps build that evidence. And if you are working with the coach, they're going to outline all of these things, right? All the best ways to make sure that your symptoms are getting documented And that goes back to that strategy, education, and medical evidence. Claims are won or lost by medical evidence. So if you're interested in a coach, you can go back to that link and get signed up or reach out for a discovery call. But completing that, as we call it, golden circle, right? Making sure the Kaluza triangle is completed, the 3 elements of service connection, and the severity of your symptoms, so you get the rating that you morally, ethically, and legally deserve. Ian, you have anything about that?
Not so much about that, but definitely to the next part where we're going to talk about urinary incontinence secondary to PTSD. Donnie just talked about incontinence secondary to a TBI or a result of a TBI. Studies have shown that PTSD is independently associated with urinary incontinence. This means this is a strong correlation between PTSD and urinary incontinence. This means if you have a VA rating of PTSD, you could potentially be eligible for a VA rating for avoiding dysfunction, also known as urinary incontinence, as a secondary condition. Secondary conditions are disabilities that the VA determines are caused by another rated disability. So maybe you've got PTSD or you've got TBI and you get urinary. They talk about neurological bladder, like what Donnie was talking about. Maybe those would be your actual secondary conditions to the primary. The primary being the PTSD or the mental health, what is called mental health, because mental health is mental health, no matter what your condition is that you're diagnosed with. The VA is rating you on your symptoms, but the secondary conditions, like the urinary incontinence, is that secondary, or could be a result thereof, either a residual or whatnot as well. So the thinking of that when the secondary condition is not for your service-connected disability, but therefore a secondary condition also service-connected. So secondary conditions are rated in the same way as a primary condition and can lead to a huge boost in your rating. So getting the VA rating for the urinary incontinence secondary to PTSD, you have to prove your PTSD is causing the incontinence, or correlation isn't enough. You can prove as through medical records, nexus, and independent medical opinions. And then, of course, understanding the differences of the urinary incontinence. And again, we talked about education earlier in the conversation too. Really, once you get assigned to a coach and you sign up to join the program, again, clicking that link up there, getting assigned to a coach, you'll learn more about this in our blogs and our posts and different places that we have for education pieces. And again, like what Donnie was saying, if you're not sure if you want to get signed up for a coach, you want to get really established, you want to know what the program's about, get that discovery call and talk to one of our elite professionals over there as one of the veteran ambassadors. So understanding the types of urinary incontinence, it's important not to note the urinary or the incontinence is not a disease itself, but rather a symptom of several causes, like what Donnie was talking about earlier too. While your urinary incontinence VA rating depends on how often you change your absorbent materials, this is kind of a reiteration of what was talked about before. Your exact symptoms depend on what type of incontinence you have. So it can be stress or urge incontinence. So stress incontinence is the type of that occurs when the bladder experiences increased pressure resulting in the urine leakage. Things like coughing, sneezing, laughing, lifting objects, exercising can contribute to the pressure. Stress incontinence is often associated with weakened pelvic floor muscles for supporting the bladder and urethra. Donnie, you want to go over the urge incontinence as well?
Absolutely. Urge incontinence. This involves a solid urge to urinate followed by involuntary urine loss before reaching the bathroom. It's often caused by a detrusor muscle that controls bladder contractions. In some cases, neurological conditions or infections may be contributing factors. So this is an external source. And then there's overflow incontinence. This occurs when the bladder doesn't completely empty, causing it to fill beyond its capacity. This results in dribbling or continuous leakage of amounts of urine. It's often associated with conditions like a prostate in men or nerve damage. That prostate muscle is responsible for a lot of things down there, and when there's damage to that, then it can lead to urinary incontinence, and the severity depends on the damage to that muscle or your ability to use it. You want to finish those out?
So functional incontinence, this is the type of incontinence stems from cognitive impairments that make it difficult for individuals to reach the toilet in time. This type of incontinence is common among adults facing mobility issues or dementia. Um, so functional incontinence is just it stems from that cognitive impairments. Mixed incontinence, you experience more than one type of urinary incontinence. So you may have the functional, the urge, or combination thereof. Most often refers to combination of stress incontinence and urge incontinence, and that's what I was alluding to as well. Making a VA claim for erectile dysfunctions, where I can talk a little bit about ED, is a little more challenging than a straightforward connection. In other words, there are more steps for a veteran to take before winning the claim. Instead of having a straightforward service connection, the veteran must have apply for SMC or special monthly compensation, as well as getting the correct rating. The goal to help the veteran understand that it is possible to have ED as part of their compensation plan to assist in veterans ED. Let's first explain exactly is ED. So, what is ED? Also, what I just said before is erectile dysfunction is simply the inability to sustain an erection for a sexual intercourse. Many times, erectile dysfunction may or may not develop until after service member gets out of the military. ED is relatively common amongst many men across the nation. Many men experience ED during periods of stress and when mentally drained. When a person has ED, they can mean it is a sign of health problems that will need medical treatment. By treatment ED in the early stages, you will be able to alleviate stress. And the common things that can be associated to ED is secondary things to like mental health, hence the stress factor, whether it's PTSD or anxiety or whatever it happens to be. ED has also been connected to different medications as well that by mental health standards as well. So what causes ED? These are some signs. So struggling to get an erection, no interest in doing sexual activities, premature ejaculation, difficulty having any ejaculation, anorgasm, the inability to achieve orgasm after ample stimulation. Um, but please consult your doctor if these symptoms happen regularly and find out what prescriptions are available. There are causes of erectile dysfunction, one of those being medication, one of the most permanent being antidepressant medications, like I just, a little bit talked about. And these are noted erectile dysfunction as a side effect of mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, hence the stress factor. And more also cause ED. In a normal erection, the blood fills up to the tissues in the penis. With erectile dysfunction, anything which affects the tissue in the penis or in the blood, its ability to flow easily and regularly, or anything else that's in it, can cause erectile dysfunction. When medication is consumed, this may or may not affect the blood flow in the body. All right, and Donnie, want to go over what are some of the examples of the conditions?
Absolutely. Some of those are heart disease, uh, arteriosclerosis, diabetes, obesity, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, metabolic syndrome, Peyronie's disease, which is scar tissue inside the penis, prostate cancer, alcohol and substance abuse, sleep disorders, BPH or enlarged prostate, injuries in the hips, lower spine, upper parts of your legs, basically any musculoskeletal injury in or adjacent to the pelvis. That's because it can impact your nerves around there. The majority of cases claiming erectile dysfunction as a secondary condition is either caused by a service-connected condition or can aggravate or a service-connected condition. That means that proving a direct service connection will be rated at 0, which will be explained below. Proving your service connection for erectile dysfunction. Let's be honest, most veterans do not suffer from a deformity problem. When you file your claim for erectile dysfunction, explain what your symptoms are. The ED mentioned earlier will have to be a secondary condition. To understand how secondary conditions work, check out this post here, and we'll put that link in the chat. On a more in-depth understanding, VA raters often won't address secondary conditions or medication side effects unless you give them a specific explanation for why they should consider anything other than direct service connection. Don't give up hope on claiming your ED claim as SMC. You have to make sure your documentation back up your ED claim. The fastest way to do that is to make sure that you complete that Kaluza triangle file a claim using your strategy, education, medical evidence. Get signed up with a coach and have them walk you through that process. Make sure that all your T's are crossed and I's are dotted when uh, you're finished with this claim process. You know, I got the recap. Yeah.
Yeah, tired of fighting in VA, ready to learn about filing a winning VA claim. This is the fastest way to do so, and we'll see you inside. So thanks for joining us and coming out with us and be able to talk a little bit about this particular condition. It's a common thing that does come about in the SMC. Donnie's got a large spectrum and a scope on this whole idea of the SMCs and everything else that you can get uh, a possibility for. Let's talk a little about that in a little bit of a space. SMC is not something you really file for. It's something that the VA grants you once you file the condition that falls underneath the criteria for the SMC. So just want to give a clarification on that. Got a little early on this, but we're going to go ahead and get with the questions since we are a little on this topic and see what we got. But thanks for bearing with us. Okay.
So,
Jack,
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead. If you got one.
Gabriella Azakar. Hello, I served in the Navy. My case has been sent to the Board of Veterans Appeals for my aid in attendance. What are the odds of winning? So, uh, there's not necessarily odds of winning, and it's hard to say what your odds of winning are without seeing the evidence presented, right? So your odds of winning are based off of your ability to provide all the medical evidence necessary to prove that your claim is at least as likely as not in your favor, which is a 50-50 chance. The I will say that the aid and attendance requirements have gotten a lot harder or a lot stricter over the years. They've changed. So it's a pretty difficult process. Right? There's a link, there's a number of interviews and all that stuff. So good job getting through that. I know it's tiresome, it's gruesome, but now you have to do wait and quite honestly, any percentage or chance I assign to it would just be hyperbole because I haven't seen anything that you're working with. I would say though that once you get a decision, if it's not favorable, make sure you read that denial letter thoroughly so you can address what was the reason for denial and then maybe appeal that.
For sure. Good question, guys. And one has one here. It says, what happens if your claim goes to higher level review based on being denied only on basis because was previously denied? Need a little clarification on that one, but most cases when it comes to denials, when a coach looks over it, when I look over it, I'm looking for two different things. And Donnie can back me up on this too, as well. It's a matter in fact or a matter in law. It does have to be one of those two things. And if it's not one of those two things, an HLR typically was not going to fly. But look at all the things. Definitely review it with your coach if you're assigned to your coach. There's a lot of different things that we look over to make sure that certain things are in the decision letter. And if they're not there, then the HLR is justified and moving forward with that claim. Donnie, got anything to add?
No, you got that down. I just, make sure that you're able to identify your argument and articulate it. As Ian said, it's not just it's not just you're not just saying I disagree. You know, you have to have be able to point out an error in fact or an error in legality, and then articulate that. It's super important. Brian Rogers says, I'm currently dealing with urinary incontinence after taking chemo, BCG, immunotherapy for a bladder cancer diagnosis through the VA. I'm sorry to hear that, brother. It it sounds like you're after the chemo, so hey, congratulations. I know that's tough. I have gone through it before. It's brutal. It's horrible. So I'm glad to see you on the other side. I would say, look at getting that connected as a secondary condition. If you are service connected for that cancer. So typically how cancers work, right? You get a temporary rating while the cancer is active and it's being treated, and once it's benign, that temporary rating is taken away. So then you have to look at connecting your secondaries. What is the result of that treatment and or the cancer? So what are your current conditions that are related to those issues? Because your rating is going to go from that temporary 100% down to whatever rating you deserve after that. So connecting those secondaries is extremely important to maintain the rating you deserve.
There's one other here I want to kind of grab on. So Pepe, classes are part of the elite process. So if you're not with a coach yet, get signed up with a coach. Join our elite program for free because it is a free process. And you can get with your coach and talk about those things. And our other classes, such as like new client orientation, it really gives you a full spectrum and a full scope, exactly what the program's all about too. But once you're a part of the elite program, the classes are absolutely free. It's part of the program. So I hope that answers your question. And Juan, great clarification. So you had an error. It was probably in your favor. They have to reevaluate and make sure whatever that happens to be to review it and make it the best possible decision based off of the evidence. Again, it's based off the evidence, based off of the evidentiary record, based off of that collision triangle too. So you still have to complete that collision triangle like what Donnie was talking about. And he alluded to the golden circle. So the fourth piece that we believe here at VUCI, I'm going to kind of go over this just for real quick, is severity of symptoms. So how bad does it feel? How long does it last? And how many times does it happen? So feels really bad, happens 2 or 3 times a week, and it lasts for several hours. It's just one example. Okay. And that's kind of how that would be brought into that space.
Yeah, Mark Nichols said it's a long wait after getting approved to go on the docket to see the judge. I've been waiting since September of 2021. Yes, sir. Once you're looking to see a veteran judge, there's a long wait. And that's why it's really important. And our process involves winning your claim from the start, right? You want to make sure that your medical evidence is complete and thorough. And that's why we have the strategy, education, medical evidence process. And that's why we have our 8-step process. Strategy, education, medical evidence is what you use in preparation. And then the 8-step process is basically a guide of what's going to happen next. If it's not approved, then there's another step, and you walk through that 8-step process and until you get the VA rating that you morally, ethically, and legally deserve. If you file a fully developed claim with the medical evidence necessary the first time around, so that means completing the collusive triangle, the in-service event, the current diagnosis, and the nexus, and you have the treatment documentation to show that the severity of your symptoms are consistent with the rating you deserve, then it's a much easier process. And hey, I would much rather get the rating I deserve now than wait 3 to 7 years, which can happen in that appeals process. So I would say it's always great to talk to an expert in their field. A coach. You sign up with a coach and make sure that you have the proper strategy, the right medical evidence to get the rating you deserve the first time around and not wait that long.
For sure. Mike Dolores, how can you get a CMP results from a denied claim in 2020? So CMP results go to what's called your C file, unless your CMP exam was conducted at the VA, and in that case, it would go to your blue button report. And both of those, well, not both of those, the the one thing I was just talking about, the blue button report, is on your My Healthy Vet on va.gov. The C file, if someone can drop in that there's a link to get your C file. We have one on our website, how to get it fast, and it's basically a FOIA request that you request that claims file in order to receive your C&P results. Copy your DD-214, your service treatment records. There's a lot of things that can go in that C file that you can request from. But if you're with a coach or you get with a coach, get signed up, and you can sign up for free for a free discovery call, or you can just get signed up with one of the coaches here at VA Claims Insider. Hope that helps. Looks like Larry Hooks has got a pretty good question here too as well. Tinnitus, I have been having a condition since I left active duty and just retired from the reserves last year with it, and not knowing what it was. How hard is it to claim it? I have 60% currently for PTSD and sinusitis. My goal is 100%. Please advise. Great question. Tinnitus is one of those that's subjective. So it is self-diagnosed by the veteran. But it doesn't hurt to go to your audiologist and get seen for those things too. Just to have a little bit more probative value. But it is self-diagnosed by the veteran and can claim for it. But there's some other contributing factors to that too. Was there a high probability for noise in your job? Did you or did you just not have very good hearing protection while you're in, hearing conservation while you're in? Different criteria for different veterans for different time frames too. So, I was in the 90s and in the 2000s. We had pretty good hearing conservation, where people were in the 80s and the 70s didn't have the best hearing conservation. So it depends when you served, and also if you had adequate hearing protection, or, hey, I just forgot to grab my earplugs that day and I fired my weapon when I was at the range. Okay. You could have got that popping noise, then the ring, or whatever it happens to be for you, because the ringing is not always the case of what tinnitus can be. It could also be buzzing, clicking, hissing, cricket sounding, could sound like tonal white noise. It could be a lot of stuff. It's whatever you hear or don't hear in that case, that's causing you that acoustic trauma. So I hope that helps. And again, getting assigned to a coach, really grasping what these things mean and going over these things with your coach will help you out in the end. But again, signed up for free for that free discovery call with one of our professionals, or getting assigned to a coach and just jumping on board. Great question. We hear it every day too, I think.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And to piggyback on that, there are some proposed rating changes that are very likely to take effect. It's going to make tinnitus no longer a service connectable condition. If those changes do take effect, then it will be a symptom of other conditions, which will make it much harder for veterans to get that tinnitus service connected, and or the symptoms that are associated with tinnitus service connected. So I highly recommend, if you have tinnitus and it is not service connected, take action fast, right? Get in there, get with a coach and figure out what you need to do to get that taken care of prior to those rating changes. You don't want to be stuck on the other side of that law, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of the other ones that are going out there. Mental health is getting possibly changed on the proposal list, along with obstructive sleep apnea. Just recently had the digestive tract completely dissected, wrong word, dissected altogether, and they've got a bunch of things like GERD that was changed over to esophageal stricture. So definitely, if you've got those conditions and need an increase on the conditions you already have, definitely getting assigned to your coach or to a coach and getting jump on board and really taking ownership of your claims is a bigger part. And we have a saying here: absolutely no one can care more about your claims than you, because you have to take ownership. You have to take the bull like by the horns, so to speak, and really, really hone down and get with your coach and start working on your claims. Because like I said before, we can't file it for you. We could be there for you. We could be there to fight for you in your corner, but we can't file that claim for you. Good questions, guys. I'm going to touch on Pretty Hannah's real quick, and it's not something that we really take care of that much. But our preferred provider network can provide letters for a P&T rating, but what it is 100% disabled, but not total and permanent. How to apply to get a P&T, or they put TMP, and then thank you, of course. This is one of those things that we personally don't coach through per se, but we can send you to the right appropriate people. Our preferred provider network, Telemedica, can get a TMP or P&T letter written for you in that fashion. It's not a shoe-in, but it does give you a better fighting chance to be able to get that P&T rating. But there might be another way around that too. It just depends on your circumstance.
Juan Garza says erectile based on lower lumbar injury and surgeries. I'm not sure exactly what the question is there, but however, yes, that is typically something that a service can connectable if your records support that your ED is related to that issue. A lot of times when there's a lower lumbar injury and or surgeries, then you have something, a residual called radiculopathy, and that is basically constriction around the nerves in your spinal cord. And your spinal cord carries the signals throughout your body to complete tasks, right? So if there's a barrier for that signal to go below that injury, which is where your erectile dysfunction occurs, and it seems to be likely, given a solid nexus letter, that could be attributed to your lower back injury and service connectable. It's a great thing to talk with a coach about and see if your evidence aligns that way. And if not, find out the best strategy to help you get the rating you legally, morally, and ethically deserve.
All right, and kind of a recap of the topic that we talked about today. We talked about erectile dysfunction, urinary incontinence, and female sexual arousal disorder. Strategy, education, medical evidence, like we talked about before, is our SEM method. That's our acronym. You do get a one-on-one coaching with one of the coaches here if you do get signed up for our program. That first thing that you're going to get is going to be that welcome call. The second part is going to be you yourself booking that strategy session to be able to figure out what exactly you're going to go after. What's your game plan? The claim submission is the second part. That's when you actually are going to file your claim and do the claim submission on your own with your coach. Of course, we can't do it for you. We can't do any of those things for you, but we can be on that phone while you're doing it in case you have any roadblocks. The CMP education, going through and getting ready to go and make sure that you are ready to go. Again, we have a lot of tips and tricks, whatever you want to call them, really getting you ready to go and ready to go as far as, what's the best practices through a CMP exam itself. Much like Donnie and myself, we've been through these before. We know how it goes. We can kind of lead, kind of put you in the right direction to make sure you're following the right steps. Go over the live classes, Donnie.
Absolutely. So, sorry. There's that GERD we were talking about.
I could take it if you need a moment.
I got it.
Okay.
Again, we have live classes via Zoom 3 times a day. Coffee with the coaches. Again, wake up, make your best cup of joe, break bread with some fellow veterans. A lot of times we'll have some, topics of the day, and then just a great time to ask questions related to your claims process, your disability process, other things that impact your, your mental health or your life. A good way to develop community. Mental health exam education. Attending that repeatedly is a great way to make sure that you have the education you need to be successful in your mental health exams. It takes time to develop the courage and strength to talk about things associated, especially with mental health, right? It's a hard topic. So putting in the time in those classes is extremely rewarding in the end. And then we have our medical exam education course. For everything outside of mental health, it's medical. And Same thing. Attend those often. Take notes, listen, and get the education you need to be successful in your process.
For sure. And Brian's book, You Deserve It, second edition is now available, or yours on Amazon today. Or you can also get a download for free copy by going to youdeserveitfree.com. Thank you for joining us on a Wednesday afternoon. Glad to see everyone here. Thank you again for your service, your time. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Donnie, it's always a pleasure. Great to see you again, brother.
Likewise, Ian. It's always a pleasure working with you, bro.